In a quiet mountain town buried under winter snow, children began to disappear without a trace. No struggle, no witnesses, no answers. But one man refused to believe they were simply gone. A former Marine, living in silence with his loyal German shepherd, followed a trail everyone else ignored. Footprints in the snow, a single tire track leading into the woods, and the faint smell of blood mixed with something colder than ice. What he and his dog discovered wasn't an accident. It was a secret, hidden behind the town's trust. A truth so horrifying it would shatter everything people believed about safety, innocence, and the people they thought they could trust. This isn't the story of a superhero. It's the story of a man who refused to stay silent, and a dog who never gave up on the scent of hope. If you believe there are still miracles in this world, hit subscribe, leave a comment, share this story, and may God bless every single person watching. Frost Valley, Montana, looked like a place frozen out of time. Winter had buried the small mountain town beneath layers of white silence, snow piled thick on rooftops, telephone lines sagging with ice, and the only sound most mornings was the distant groan of wind sliding through the pines. The sky hung low, a dull slate gray that made the town feel smaller than it already was. Fewer than 2,000 people lived here year-round, most of them retired loggers, widowed ranch wives, or restless men who came to disappear. It was the kind of place where strangers were noticed, but tragedies were quietly folded into routine, until the missing children changed everything. 3 days, 2 kids, vanished without a trace. No camera footage, no screams heard in the night, no signs of struggle. Just gone. The first was Eli Turner, a shy 8-year-old boy with sandy blonde hair and a habit of walking home from school alone. The second was Maya Brooks, 10, dark-haired, adventurous, the kind of girl who climbed trees and dared boys to follow. Their absence seeped into the town like cold through a cracked window, and fear began to show in the way mothers locked doors in broad daylight, and fathers walked their kids to school with rifles in the truck. Jack Coleman watched all of this from a distance, the way he watched most things, quietly, like a man who had already lived too many lives. At 46, Jack looked older than he was, not because of age but because of memories. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried the rigid posture of a man who had spent half his life in uniform. His jaw was square, usually shadowed with rough stubble, and a faint scar cut from his right eyebrow to his temple, a souvenir from shrapnel during his last tour as a Marine. His eyes were the part people remembered, sharp, steady, the color of weathered steel. Eyes that looked like they were still measuring exits, threats, and angles, even when he was just buying supplies at the general store. He had come to Frost Valley 2 years ago, after a dishonorable discharge he never talked about, and a divorce he never tried to fight. Some men tried to outrun the past. Jack just settled where the past couldn't find him quickly. His only companion now was Rex, a 5-year-old German shepherd with a black and tan coat, intelligent amber eyes, and a calm discipline that came from K9 training. Rex moved like a creature built for both obedience and violence, muscles coiled under a thick winter coat, ears always alert, nose constantly working. Jack had served with dozens of dogs, but Rex was the only one he had taken home with him. They understood each other in a way that didn't need words. Both trained for war, both discharged into silence. On the morning everything began, Jack was walking one of the forest trails behind his cabin. The snow was fresh, barely a day old, which meant tracks were easy to read if you knew how to look. Rex trotted ahead, nose low, occasionally, glancing back to make sure Jack followed. Jack didn't expect to find anything unusual. He was just trying to stay moving, to keep old ghosts from waking up when the house got too quiet. But then Rex froze. His ears pricked, his chest stiffened, and he lowered his snout into a patch of snow where the layer seemed disturbed. Jack walked over, crouched, and brushed the snow aside. What he saw pulled the world into focus. A child-sized boot print, partly melted but clear enough to see stitching patterns. Next to it, a large adult footprint, heavy, heel-deep, like the person was carrying weight. And beside both, the impression of tire tracks, narrow and deep, the kind that came from a delivery van or utility truck, not a family vehicle. The prints led away from the trail into denser woods, where no normal person would take a child willingly. Rex sniffed the tracks and then the snow where the child had stepped. His ears flicked, and he gave a low growl, not of aggression, but alert recognition. Jack knew that sound. It meant blood, not fresh enough to stain the snow red, but just enough scent left for a trained K9 to detect. Blood and something else. Jack recognized the chemical tang of anesthesia. He had smelled it in military field tents too many times. He stood up slowly, eyes narrowing. This wasn't a kid wandering off, he muttered. Someone took them. Snow crunched behind him. Sheriff Dale Harrison appeared on the trail, wrapped in a brown winter coat that strained against his belly. He was in his late 50s, short, balding, with nicotine-stained fingers and the tired, apologetic face of a man who hadn't won a fight in years. Harrison had been sheriff, mainly because no one else wanted the job, not because he was good at it. He tried to hide his insecurity under a loose friendliness, but Jack could see the panic behind his forced calm. "You out here tracking deer, Coleman?" the sheriff asked, pretending not to notice the tension. Jack pointed at the prints. "Those are no deer. That's a kid. Small boot, size maybe 2 or 3. And that's a grown man walking beside them." Rex picked up blood. Sheriff Harrison crouched, squinting like the snow might rearrange itself into something less disturbing. Could just be from the search parties. Folks been walking all over this area since those kids went missing. Jack shook his head. No search party vehicle came through here. Those are fresh tire tracks. Look at the edges. No ice formed yet. Harrison swallowed, eyes shifting away. "Jack, I know you mean well, but we can't go building theories every time we find tracks in the woods. The parents are scared enough." "You want to keep pretending the kids wandered off?" Jack asked, voice low but steady. "Because I promise you, whoever walked here didn't take a child to build a snowman." Rex gave a short bark, pressing his nose deeper into the snow. Jack took a step toward the direction of the tracks, but Harrison raised a hand. "Leave this to the department, Coleman. I'll file this in the investigation notes." "You gonna follow the trail?" Jack asked. Silence. Harrison didn't answer. He already knew he wouldn't. Jack exhaled slowly, the vapor twisting into the air like smoke. He stared at the sheriff the way a soldier stares at a man who doesn't know a battlefield when he's standing on one. "Then I will," Jack said. He clicked his tongue, and Rex fell in beside him like a shadow. They stepped off the trail and into the deeper woods, following the prints that were beginning to disappear under falling snow. Jack didn't know where they led yet, but his gut knew something beyond tragedy was unfolding, something organized, practiced, and far darker than 2 lost children. And as the snow continued to fall, the forest seemed to close behind them like a door. The snow had begun to fall harder by the time Jack and Rex pushed deeper into the woods, following the fading trail of footprints and tire marks. The forest was quiet in that heavy way winter could silence everything, as if the world were holding its breath. Rex moved ahead with purpose, pausing only when the scent grew faint. Jack trusted the dog's instincts more than any compass. Rex had survived bomb zones in Afghanistan, where one wrong step meant death. If he was locked onto a scent, it meant something was there. The trail led them to the edge of Frost Valley's old industrial district, a stretch of abandoned buildings once used for lumber processing, before the mill shut down 10 years earlier. Most of the structures were collapsing under snow and rot, but one building still stood intact, an old storage warehouse with rusted metal siding and a padlocked front door. The snow around it looked disturbed, flattened in rectangular patches where a vehicle had parked recently. No footprints now, only the imprint of thick tires and a faint smear of red near the door that had frozen into the ice. Rex lowered his head, sniffed the patch of ice, and gave a sharp bark. Blood again, stronger this time, mixed with the sharp, sterile sting of medical chemicals. Jack knew the smell well. Too well. It was the same combination found in field operating tents, where medics worked on soldiers torn open by shrapnel, but didn't have time to clean properly. Jack checked the door. Locked. He circled the building, searching for a weak point, found a window with a broken latch, and slipped inside. The interior was dark, except for slivers of daylight cutting through cracks in the metal walls. The space smelled wrong, like metal and bleach and something colder than death. In the center sat a stainless steel table, its surface scratched and stained. Along the wall, a portable generator hummed beside a line of industrial refrigeration units. New, expensive, far too advanced to be sitting in a dead building. One of the freezers hung open, revealing sealed medical containers marked with barcodes and temperature warnings. Jack felt the same cold inside his chest that he had felt the day he watched a medic zip up a body bag containing the youngest man in his unit. This wasn't kidnapping. This was harvesting. He took out his phone, took pictures, table, blood, containers, equipment. Enough to force the sheriff to move, or at least enough to interest federal law enforcement. Rex paced, restless, sniffing at a set of metal restraints bolted to the wall. They were too small for an adult, too perfectly sized for a child. Footsteps crunched outside. Jack tensed, stepping behind a pillar. Rex stayed silent, trained to freeze when danger was near. The footsteps didn't enter, just stopped by the door, followed by a tense breath. Then a woman's voice, shaking, speaking to someone who wasn't there. Please, please just bring her back. Jack recognized the voice. Linda Brooks, mother of the missing girl, Maya. He had seen her once at the grocery store months earlier, before grief drained the light out of her. Now she stood outside the warehouse, clutching a flyer with her daughter's picture. Linda was in her late 30s, thin from stress, with long dark hair pulled into a messy braid and eyes swollen from sleepless nights. Her clothes hung off her like she had forgotten how to eat. She looked like a person stuck between hope and collapse. Jack stepped out quietly. Mrs. Brooks, she startled, turning fast, brown eyes widening when she saw him. You, Jack, right? The Marine who lives up on Ridge Road? He nodded. I was following a trail. It led here. She looked past him toward the warehouse door, fear and need warring in her expression. Did you find anything? Anything at all? I don't care if it's small. I just need to know she's not. Her voice cracked, collapsing into silence. Jack hesitated. He wasn't good with fragile people. War hadn't trained him for softness. But he also knew that lies were poison to parents who still believed there was time to save their child. "I found enough to know she didn't run away," he said. "Someone took the kids. Someone with resources." Linda breathed out in a shudder, the snowflakes landing on her lashes. "The sheriff keeps telling me to be patient, that she'll turn up." Her jaw tightened. "He doesn't believe anything bad happened. He keeps saying kids wander off." Jack looked at her, seeing not just grief but fire, the kind that only appears in parents who refuse to bury hope. "He's wrong," Jack said. "I'll take what I found to him again, but I doubt he'll act on it. So I'm not waiting anymore." Linda stared at him, truly seeing him for the first time. "Why are you helping?" she asked, voice soft but raw. "You don't even know us." Jack didn't answer right away. He just looked down at Rex, who had settled beside him, ears perked, ready for a command. Then he met Linda's eyes again. "Because I've already lost a child," he said, "and I can't let someone else live that twice." Her eyes filled but didn't spill over. Instead, she nodded once, a small but powerful vow. "Then I'll help you, whatever you need." Jack glanced back at the warehouse. "Right now? I need you far away from this place. Whoever did this might come back." She hesitated, then stepped back, hugging her coat closer. "Just find her, please." Jack watched her leave, footprints vanishing in the falling snow. Then he turned back to the building and exhaled, knowing that what he found today wasn't evidence. It was a declaration. Whoever was running this operation was organized, confident, and unafraid of leaving traces because they expected no one to look in the right places. But now someone was looking, and he had a dog with a nose that never forgot a scent. The next morning, the sky over Frost Valley was the color of bruised steel, and the wind carried the sharp bite of a coming storm. Jack didn't sleep. He sat at his kitchen table with maps spread out, marking every industrial road, abandoned site, and refrigerated access point in the region. Beside him, Rex lay awake, ears flicking at every distant sound, as if the dog sensed the urgency growing in Jack's chest. They both knew something. The trail was no longer just a trail. It was becoming a route. And routes meant repetition, and repetition meant operation. Rex picked up the scent again near the logging road behind the warehouse, fresher this time. Jack followed him through the tree line until he reached a gravel clearing where snow had been plowed away. A semi-truck sat idling, the type normally used to transport meat or frozen goods, its refrigeration unit humming like distant machinery in a morgue. The trailer was unmarked, no logo, no numbers, except a small serial decal scraped halfway off. Someone wanted it anonymous. Jack crouched behind a fallen log, watching. A driver stood near the back of the truck, smoking, impatient. He was in his early 40s, heavy-set, thick beard covering a jaw that looked like it had been broken once and set wrong. His knuckles were scarred, the kind earned by punching more than working. His name, Jack would later learn, was Frank Meller, a former long-haul trucker fired 2 years ago after being caught running illegal cargo. Tattoos peeked from under his sleeves, barbed wire, blacked-out letters, a faded skull. A man who had stopped caring about honest work long before now. The truck doors opened from the inside. Jack expected crates of meat, but instead saw sterile white medical stretchers, strapped into the wall like bodies lined in a morgue. Several held folded blankets, sized for children. Metal trays held cold packs, blood bags, and rows of sealed surgical gloves. One stretcher still had restraints attached, the kind used in hospitals but with lock pins added. Whoever was running this had transformed a food truck into a mobile pediatric lab. Then someone else stepped into view, and Jack's pulse tightened. Dr. Nathaniel Howard, the town's chief physician, walked out from the trees as calmly as if he were arriving for a routine check at the clinic. In his early 50s, tall, trim, always well-groomed, Dr. Howard had the polished reassurance of a man people trusted instantly. His silver hair was combed back neatly, his wire-rimmed glasses polished, his winter coat tailored in a way that didn't quite fit Frost Valley's working-class reality. His voice, when he spoke, was smooth, controlled, the kind meant to soothe worried parents. No one in town would ever imagine him standing behind a refrigerated truck, carrying medical restraints and blood bags. And that was exactly why he was there. He checked the inside inventory with clinical detachment, not a flicker of hesitation. "Schedule is tight," he said, handing Mellor an envelope. "We move the next group before sundown. The buyers are expecting processed organ sets, not excuses." Mellor grunted. Kids are harder to move than cattle. People notice when they scream. Howard gave the slightest smile, the kind that didn't touch his eyes. "That's why we sedate them properly." Jack felt something cold settle in his gut. He had seen men like Howard in war zones, well-educated monsters who hid behind professionalism while committing atrocities no soldier would ever justify. Men who believed they were above consequence because they surrounded themselves with the illusion of respectability. Rex stayed low beside him, muscles rigid, eyes fixed on Howard. The dog could smell everything inside that truck: blood, disinfectant, fear that had dried into metal. Jack lifted his phone and recorded every word, every face, every container. Then he saw something that made his jaw clench. A bracelet, small, beaded, bright purple, hanging from the edge of one stretcher. He recognized it. Linda Brooks had shown him a picture of Maya wearing it in the missing poster. She had been in that truck. Jack shifted his weight, but a branch snapped under his boot. Mellor's head jerked up. He scanned the trees. Howard looked too, collected, calculating, but neither moved toward Jack's position. "Not yet." "You hear that?" Mellor muttered. "Probably a deer," Howard said. "Finish loading and lock the trailer. We leave in 10. Jack retreated silently with Rex, not because he was afraid, but because now he had a name, a face, and proof. Going in now, alone, armed only with a dog and a phone, would get him killed and get the kids lost forever. He needed a way to cut the head off the operation, not just the truck. Snow started falling harder, masking his tracks. Rex stayed close, tail low, knowing the threat wasn't over, only beginning. When they were far enough, Jack finally spoke, not to Rex, but to the ghost of every man he failed to save. "They chose the wrong town," he said, voice hard. "They don't get to walk away from this." Rex let out a low growl, the kind meant not for fear, but for war. Jack waited until nightfall before moving. The storm had passed, leaving the world carved in white and shadow. The snowpack hardened into a slick surface that cracked beneath boots like thin glass. Jack had spent half the day watching the warehouse district through binoculars from a ridge, tracking movement, timing shifts, learning patterns. The next transport was scheduled for night. He heard Howard say it himself. That meant the children still alive would be moved soon, sedated, loaded, and gone forever. Tonight was his only window. He parked his truck a quarter-mile away and approached on foot with Rex, staying low against the snowdrifts. Jack's left shoulder ached, old military injury that flared in cold. But he pushed through it. Pain was fuel. It reminded him of every soldier he hadn't been able to save. It reminded him of his daughter, Emily, a quiet 7-year-old with wispy blonde hair, who died of a rare heart condition while Jack was deployed overseas, gone while he was still pretending he could protect the world. He hadn't cried at the funeral. He hadn't spoken. He had stood like a dead man surrounded by living ones. Tonight, the anger in him wasn't rage. It was simply unfinished duty. The warehouse lights were off, but the truck was running. Same refrigerated model, engine humming like a deep mechanical heartbeat. Two figures moved around it, loading sealed containers. One was Frank Meller, the bearded driver from earlier. The other was someone Jack hadn't seen before. A tall man in his 30s, gaunt face, slick dark hair tied into a low ponytail, wearing tactical winter gear. His movement was efficient, almost militaristic, but without the discipline of a soldier, more like a mercenary. His name, Jack would later learn, was Victor Hale, a former private security contractor kicked out of 2 countries for illegal trafficking. His face was narrow, eyes small and calculating, the kind of man who enjoyed hurting others because control made him feel alive. Jack moved in closer, gun ready. His plan was simple: disable the truck, take Rex in, grab whatever kids were being transported, then vanish before backup arrived. But plans rarely survived contact with reality. Just as he neared the trailer hatch, Hale turned sharply, raising a suppressed pistol and firing. The bullet hit a metal beam inches from Jack's head, ricocheting with a scream of hot metal. Rex barked once, a warning, then lunged, dragging Jack behind a crate just as Hale fired again. Snow exploded where Jack had been standing. They knew he was coming. Meller pulled a radio from his belt. "He's here! The Marine!" Jack fired once from cover, hitting the radio and shattering it. Not a kill shot, deliberate. He needed Meller alive for answers. Hale ducked behind the truck bumper and returned fire. Methodical, trained. Jack whispered to Rex, "Go." Rex sprinted through the snow like a shadow, weaving, silent, circling, behind Meller. The driver panicked, firing wildly. Rex leapt, teeth clamping into the man's arm, dragging him down. The gun dropped. Meller screamed, blood soaking the snow. Hale swung his aim toward the dog, but Jack emerged and fired, grazing Hale's thigh and forcing him behind the trailer. Hale cursed, retreated, then jumped into a snow-ready utility ATV parked nearby, engine running. At the same moment, the truck, driverless but still idling, began rolling forward, downhill toward the service road, carrying the kids inside. Jack dragged Meller aside, ignoring his pleas. "How many children are in that truck?" Jack demanded. Meller spat blood. "3 this run, maybe 4, don't know, don't care. Just paid to move cargo." Jack didn't wait. He whistled, sharp and instinctive. Rex bolted toward the fleeing semi. Jack sprinted to his own truck, started the engine, slammed into gear, and tore down the icy slope. Ahead, the semi was gaining distance, its headlights slicing through swirling snow. Behind it, Hale on the ATV gave chase too, not to stop Jack, but to protect the cargo. Rex ran alongside the road, paws slipping but claws gripping, never breaking stride. Jack's truck fishtailed on black ice, but he wrestled it straight, punching through snowbanks. His breath was harsh, shoulder-pulsing pain, but adrenaline blurred everything except the truck he had to reach. Hale swerved the ATV behind Jack and fired again, bullet cracking Jack's rear window. Jack jerked the wheel, slamming Hale's vehicle with the truck's side, sending the ATV sliding into a drift. Not destroyed, but delayed. The semi neared a frozen river crossing, narrow and treacherous. If the driver hit the ice at full speed, the weight could break through, and the children inside would drown before anyone could reach them. Jack cut onto the side path, accelerating until he was parallel. then slammed the truck into the semi's front tire. The impact sent pain through Jack's ribs, but the collision forced the semi off balance. The driver fought to recover, but ice took control. Trailer jackknifed, engine roared, and then the whole rig slid sideways and crashed against a snow embankment inches before the river drop. Silence. Steam billowed from the engine. Jack staggered out, bleeding from his eyebrow. Rex reached the trailer first, barking, pawing at the metal door. Jack pried the latch with shaking hands. Inside, 3 children lay sedated on stretchers, pulse weak but present. He exhaled. Not relief, not yet, but breath that had been held too long. Then he felt it. Not sound, not movement, but something old inside him, remembering burial flags and silent homes. He would not lose another child. The crash site was only the beginning. The 3 rescued children were alive, but barely responsive, sedatives still in their blood. Jack wrapped them in blankets from the truck's emergency kit, while Rex guarded the road, ears pricked for movement. Sirens were still distant, too distant to matter. Jack knew the operation wasn't finished. The semi was just one transport. There would be another location, a storage point, a final stage before the organs were shipped out of the country. Howard wouldn't abandon the operation just because one load was intercepted. He would move everything faster. Jack found the GPS tablet the driver had dropped in the snow. One route was highlighted in yellow, destination marked only by coordinates. Jack recognized them. A decommissioned logging site 10 miles east, deep in the forest. Abandoned 5 years ago after a mill accident killed 2 workers. No one went there anymore, which made it perfect for the kind of business Howard was running. Jack loaded the kids into his truck, locked the doors, gave Rex a signal, and drove toward the site. His shoulder throbbed from the earlier fight. His knuckles were torn from the crash. Rex sat upright in the passenger seat, calm but alert, watching the tree line blur past. The closer they came, the colder the air felt. Not from weather, but from the kind of dread that thickens inside a man who knows what he's walking into. The logging site sat in a hollow surrounded by dense timber, the moonlight catching on the rusted remains of cranes and saw rigs half buried in snow. A generator hummed inside the old mill office, and one truck, smaller, black, freshly washed, was backed up to the doorway. Jack killed his engine, got out, and moved toward the building with his pistol raised. Rex followed with silent precision. Inside, Jack found blood on the floor. Fresh, a stretcher, medical clamps, one cooler sealed, ready for shipment, and Dr. Nathaniel Howard, sleeves rolled up, latex gloves on, calmly organizing vials and surgical instruments, like a man preparing paperwork, not preparing to carve into children. His silver hair was perfectly combed, even here. His expression was calm, composed, but his eyes, flat and cold, had the stillness of a man who believed morality belonged to other people. Howard didn't flinch when he saw Jack. "I wondered how long it would take you," he said. His voice held no fear. "You're interfering with a system you don't understand, Mr. Coleman. Thousands of wealthy families pay for the chance to save their children. You want to stop that because you feel guilty about losing yours?" Jack didn't answer. His jaw tightened. Howard continued, voice smooth as ice. "We take children no one will miss, runaways, orphans, kids from towns so small the world doesn't even know they exist, and in exchange, we save the children of people who actually matter." Jack moved forward, but a shape emerged behind him. Victor Hale, injured from the ATV crash, limping but still armed. His right eyebrow was split, blood crusted to his cheek, eyes wild with anger. "You should have stayed out of this, Marine," he growled, raising the pistol toward Jack's back. Before he could fire, Rex launched from the side, jaws clamping onto Hale's forearm, ripping the gun away and dragging him to the ground. Hale screamed, striking at Rex, but the dog held firm, trained for exactly this. Jack turned, kicked the pistol out of reach, then pinned Hale with a boot to his chest. Howard tried to run. Jack caught him before he reached the door, slamming him into the metal table. The doctor fought weakly. He was intelligent, not strong. Jack's fist connected once with his jaw, sending him crumpling to the floor. Howard lay bleeding, stunned, shocked for the first time, not because he was losing, but because he was being treated like any other criminal. Rex returned to Jack's side, muzzle stained but eyes calm. Jack exhaled. "It's over." 2 hours later, the silent mill was flooded with red and blue lights. FBI vehicles rolled in, agents in heavy jackets swarming the site, collecting evidence, securing Howard and Hale, seizing coolers, dismantling equipment. Sheriff Harrison arrived too, face pale, eyes lowered, every inch of him steeped in shame. He approached Jack like a student approaching a disappointed teacher. "You were right," the sheriff said quietly. "We should have listened sooner." Jack didn't respond with anger, just tired truth. Listening isn't enough. Acting is what saves people. The children were airlifted out. Agents recorded statements. Howard was led away in cuffs, still trying to defend himself with the calm arrogance of a man who thought money would protect him. It wouldn't. Not this time. When the chaos settled, Jack stood with Rex near the tree line, watching as the children were reunited with trembling parents who had thought hope was gone. He saw Linda Brooks run to her daughter Maya, collapsing into relief. He saw fathers hold sons like they were holding the world. Jack didn't step forward. He didn't need thanks. He just watched, with Rex sitting beside him like a silent reminder that loyalty still meant something in a world that sometimes forgot. Jack placed a hand on Rex's neck. "Some battles aren't about enemies," he said quietly. "They're about making sure someone else gets a chance to live." Rex leaned into him, eyes soft, breath steaming in the cold. And for the first time in years, Jack felt something close to peace. In a world that can feel dark, we sometimes forget that miracles don't always come as flashes of light. Sometimes they come as a man who refuses to look away, or a loyal dog who never stops searching, or a stranger who chooses to care when they had no reason to. Maybe that's how God works, not always through grand signs from the sky, but through the quiet courage of ordinary people who say, "Not on my watch." Every life saved, every child returned, every tear turned into a smile. Maybe those are the real miracles we miss while waiting for the bigger ones. And if you're watching this right now, maybe you needed to be reminded of something. The world is still worth fighting for. Hope is still alive. And no good act, no matter how small, is ever wasted in God's eyes. If this story touched your heart, please share it, because someone out there may need the reminder that miracles still happen. Leave a comment below. Subscribe if you believe in stories that heal. And may God bless every one of you watching right now. May He protect your family, guide your steps, and keep your heart brave, just like Jack, and just like Rex.